Hey, AP Psych. Hopefully you are being good if I'm away. And today we're going to go through perception. So this is from Module 16, Question 1. The definition of perception. It is the process of organizing and interpreting information, enabling us to recognize meaningful objects and events. So basically, it's how we perceive or interpret information. Remember when we talked about sensation, we talked about how all of that sensory information from sensation goes to our brain, and then we have to label it. We have to organize it and make sense of it. That labeling and organizing and making sense, that's the perception part. So a lot of perception is based on our experiences, what we know and what we've learned, and how we kind of make sense of the world. Here's a little quote for you. We do not perceive the world how it really is, but as it is useful for us to perceive it. So I mentioned before how my perception of an event might be different from yours, might be different from somebody else's. So really, we bring our own experiences and our own understanding into perception. A lot of it has to do with our motivation. Why are we trying to perceive something, and what do we understand to be true? Part of perception is looking at optical illusions. An illusion is a distortion of the senses when perception overrides sensation. So we watched that video, and it did a really good job going through some of the reasons why those illusions work the way that they did. But basically, the idea for the reason behind the illusion is your perception of what's going on, not what's actually going on. I hope this doesn't get cut off. It says, what is a perceptual set? This is from Module 17, and this is question number 1 on your RT&W. Perceptual sets are basically the idea that we have pre-existing expectations or notions based on top-down processing. Remember, top-down kind of starts with that perception, and then we kind of label and fit things into that. So we see basically what we expect to see. So we use things like priming and schemas and context. So priming is the idea that if I start talking about a subject and then I ask you a question and it has to do with that subject, because I've already been talking about it, I've been priming you, you're more likely to already kind of associate it with whatever I was just talking about. Schemas are your organization of what things fit into certain categories and how things go together. So if I were to ask you, what's your schema of school supplies, you would probably be able to tell me like pencils and paper and binders and backpacks, because you have this schema, you have this idea as what types of things fit into that and what types of things don't. And you make these schemas for all different aspects of things that you perceive in your life. And then context, looking at in that particular situation. So again, your perceptual set, you see what you expect to see. Let's do an example of priming with these pictures that you see here. Okay, if I were to say to you, here, let me take them back. Okay, man, I just love jazz. Isn't it great? I just love it when people play like the saxophone and they're playing that jazz music, whatever. And then I showed you the picture. What are you going to see? Well, you're probably going to see the guy playing the saxophone, because I've just primed you. Okay, I use priming to introduce that concept. Or if I were to say, man, you ever look at the face of a woman? There's so many intricate details. And then, I showed you this. You'd probably see the woman's face. You see this as an optical illusion for both. So you really kind of see, priming is an example of a perceptual set. You really see what you expect to see. All right, here, does this look like a face you can trust? Think about it. Go ahead and write in your journal, would you trust this face? Now, here's the real question. Look at my cool effects. Did you see the word face? Did you see the word liar here? L-I-A-R. And the face? Okay, so we've actually used priming. I said, does this look like a face you can trust? And use the word face. The word face makes you see the face first instead of seeing the word liar first. So I don't know, write in your journal if you, number one, would trust this face, which is probably a stupid question, but I just want to see if you're watching the video. And, did you see the face first or did you see liar first? Interesting. I don't know. Okay, perceptual sets are also influenced by context. So we fill in the gaps. Your brain loves to fill in the gaps based on what you know to be true, based on the experiences and the schemas. So can you fill in this sentence? Okay, hopefully you're able to see, I want chocolate ice cream. If you can, all right, congratulations. Based on your previous knowledge of reading and basic English and context, you're able to fill that in. I don't know why I put so many pictures here. All right, I think I used to do something with this. Okay. Here is unfortunately one real world application of perceptual set. And one thing that we like to look at in psychology is what's going on with the real world and what's going on with people. And unfortunately, something that's been happening, in the last 10 years, even before that actually, is that there is racism and there is bias that is coming into professions that have to make judgment decisions. And I'm not saying all people do this, but one thing that we've seen is, kind of some unfair accusations of people or judgments being made based on perceptual sets. So one example could be if a cop chases an African American suspect down a dark alley, they might perceive him as holding a gun rather than a cell phone or a wallet, if that's kind of their stereotype or if that's their bias that they're bringing in. And this can affect, we've seen in the news some issues with this. So this is something to think about in psychology. How do our perceptual sets actually influence us in real life? So that's one example. Okay. I want you to read this in the triangle. Did you notice it said a bird in the bush? Or did you just read a bird in the bush? Okay, so if you read more carefully, you'd see, it actually has two thes. So this is an example of context, just reading through, you probably wouldn't notice this. But if you caught it the first time, good job. I also put here, I bet you did not catch it this time. Gotcha. Okay, Gestalt psychology. This is the fun one where you have all the different Gestalt principles. And on your RT&W on module 19, you should have filled out the chart with all the different parts of it, with the different proximity and similarity and closure and all of that. So you do need to know all of those from that chart. So that's a really good study tool for you. But basically the idea behind Gestalt in general is the sum of the parts are not equal always to the whole. So there are lots of different things within Gestalt psychology, but in general it means this organized whole. The whole may exceed the sum of its parts. So here is a little thing. I want you to read it. Okay, so if you are dyslexic, I apologize. This is very difficult for you. My husband is dyslexic and he had a really hard time with this. I had him do this one time. But for most of us, what it says is, according to the research at Cambridge, doesn't matter what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and the last letter be at the right place. So you're really able, okay? So these individual letters don't matter. They don't equal the whole picture, which you're able to kind of contextually be able to read and figure out anyways. So this is an example of applying Gestalt ideas to reading, is that you don't have to have all the letters 100% in order to be able to read it, as long as the first and the last are. All right, so here are some of your principles. Proximity, okay, so the idea that you will group close objects together. So I'm guessing if you're looking here at proximity in the top corner, you're not seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 individual lines. You're seeing these two grouped together, these two in the middle grouped together, and these two grouped together, and you're seeing almost these 3 bars like a jail or something. Continuity, you don't look here, you know, we're on the bottom left corner. You don't look at this and see separate parts on the top and bottom. You see one continuous squiggly line. Okay, so that's an example of continuity. Similarity, when you look at the top right corner, you probably notice that there are triangles and that there are circles, and you kind of grouped similar things together in your mind. You didn't like see them each separately. And then connectedness, okay? So what you'll see is that these look like they are connected here. Okay, and then this is actually from, I don't know if it's from your textbook or whatever, but it has some more. Okay, proximity, objects that are close together tend to be grouped together. Okay, so you can see, you know, you look at these look like they are grouped in lines here. Okay, and then closure. So here you don't see 4 separate lines. You don't see a bunch of lines here. You probably notice that this makes a circle shape, and this looks like some sort of dog, like Balto. Anyone ever seen the movie Balto? And then similarity. Okay, so you elements that are similar tend to be grouped together. So you will probably notice that these objects who are similar here, the darker ones, make a 2. Okay. And then here's simplicity. All right, so it says viewers tend to organize elements in the simplest way possible. So you probably saw a rectangle and a triangle here. And then continuity, you tend to see elements in ways that produce smooth continuation. So you probably see this line, you know, here, that these make this line. And I think there are a couple other ones that you have as well. Here's closure. Okay, so you see the triangle and circles. And you probably don't see, like, you know, you're able to make sense of those shapes. And then here you probably see a circle shape. Okay, now take a look here. Do you see circles in between the boxes? There actually aren't any circles drawn. But because, you know, it's yellow here, you actually use closure to make sense of these circles, which is really cool. Okay, here we go. Continuity. Okay. All right. So here, what images are exactly the same? It appears to be 2 continuous diagonal lines. I kind of gave it away. Okay. Which Gestalt principle explains this? All right. Go ahead and write in your journal which Gestalt principle explains this. And hopefully you got continuity. Here's the baby in the, I always joke that this looks like a baby in a jail. I think it's just a baby behind a baby gate because that's much more likely, like based on my schemas of where locations where babies are. I would say behind a baby gate is much more likely than in a jail. But you can see, you know, you have all these separate lines, but it looks like they're forming these kind of columns here. Similarity. Hopefully you see apples and pears or strawberries and pears. Tomatoes, whatever those things are. Okay. Proximity. Okay, so did you group these into like 3 separate lines here or 3 separate lines here or here? 3 separate lines. You see a face? Closure. Okay, figure ground. All right, so figure ground says that there is a figure and there is a ground. So the organization of the visual field into objects, the object is the figure and the surrounding is the ground. Okay, think like background, okay, is the surrounding. So in this, go ahead and write in your journal for this vase thing. What is the figure and what is the ground? I'm waiting for you. I suppose you could just pause too. Hopefully you wrote the vase in this is the figure and the black background is the ground. But here's the tricky thing. Did you see the profiles here of the face? Here's the nose and the lips. Oh, tricky, tricky, tricky. Okay, here's a real world application. You can take a look. Camouflage. Do you see a plane? Okay, so camouflage, which my husband loves and wears all the time, he's actually on a hunting trip now, works because you can't see the figure from the ground. Okay, so here you have a plane and trees. All right, I'm going to stop this video here. This will be part 1. and we'll pick up with part 2 of perception in the next video.